Hi everyone, welcome to Draftscapes. I'm Chris Tuccio. In this episode, we're going to look at doing plant groupings, specifically taking a number of the different types of plant or tree symbols that I've used in previous episodes, and then combining them together to show a typical situation for a plant or garden bed. Stick around. Okay, so I'm set up here and I have essentially a mock plan of a garden or a little planting bed that I'm going to do. And at this point within the design phase, you should have already had your design part of it set. You should already know which plants are going where, how you kind of want to arrange things. And so now the question is, how are we going to represent these types of plants in plan view as a grouping? And we've already been through individually how I might want to draw a specimen versus a group of conifers or some other types of plants. Those have been in previous videos, which I'll make sure to link below. But right now I'm kind of at the tail end where I've set up everything. I've lightly outlined it, all my circle guides with my pencil. You may or may not be able to see this on the video because, again, we want this to be very light. And now I'm going to go over and add the texture or the illustration of it in plan view. When I'm doing this, I actually have a variety of different pen weights or line weights on me. I have 1.0, 0.8, 0.5 and 0.3 all available because I'm going to want those things that are taller or larger to have the heavier line weight. So my specimen tree is going to be my main line weight. I'm also going to have a secondary one with a larger line weight. And then I'm going to step down the line weight as things sort of lower within this garden bed. I also have a little bit of paving over here that I'm going to do as well to just sort of tidy up the entire composition. So we'll start by just with this main specimen. So I like to work top down within my plan. So I start with the most focal point, the one that's the feature plant within a composition. So that's going to be my specimen here. And I'm going to just do this as a normal open canopy. So nothing too fancy for this. Again, this is a kind of like a fake site, a fake rendering, just for an example for the video. So this could be really anything. It could be a redbud, maybe a Coosa dogwood, Amelanchier, any sort of deciduous specimen tree. Work my way around. Now you want to just have the circle guide placed in pencil. You don't want to draw out the entire plant in pencil and then try and ink over every little detail. You want it to be a little more free-flowing than that. You kind of have to trust yourself to be able to do this, but it's well worth it. Nice heavy, thick branching structure there. Thinner here. And then I'm going to come in, cut out the canopy here. Cut out the canopy here. Okay, so then I have the ability now, if I wanted to, here with this one, to begin to stipple or to hatch to add texture on it. I'm going to skip that right now. I'm going to move on then to my next largest, which, let's say, typically with sort of these garden plans, I like to do maybe one deciduous specimen and then one really kind of nice evergreen, seasonal, winter interest plant, kind of that is complementary to it, that provides some structure and some nice highlights in the winter. So maybe this is some sort of rhododendron or holly, or maybe like a hinoki cypress. And so I'm going to come in and render it like this. Maybe I had a couple things here and here. Okay, that's all I'm going to do for that. Okay, so then I'm going to work my way down. So I'm just going to switch line weights to my 0.8, and I'm going to do sort of these three larger shrubs, or these can be even larger perennials right here. Maybe these are something like a juniper, or they could be maybe something like a small viburnum. And so I'm going to just do these regular contour style, and they're going to be 3 individual plants. So they're going to read individually. They might touch here and there, but they're going to be not grouped together. Now remember, this isn't a planting plan. This is an illustrative plan. So we want it to be true to what we're doing, but we're not going to label plants here. We're not going to add a legend that shows the botanical nomenclature. That would be saved for the actual planting plan. This is just for the purposes of showcasing our design to a client in an illustrative way. Something like that. And put little dots in the center of those. Okay, so I'm stepping down here again. I have these little seating rocks maybe that I want, these little sculptural stones, little boulders. Add some sort of interest in the bed. So I'm going to add these. The same line weight. There's 3 of them. Okay, then I'm going to switch line weights again. I'm going to go down again to now my 0.5, and I'm going to do these 2 groupings as well as these last few. So here, maybe it's just a grouping of 3 perennials. Could be something like Baptisia or lupin, I don't know, some sort of seasonal flowering plant. Maybe it's something with harder edges, maybe like daylilies. I'm going to render these like so. So I'm going to actually go around the edge of all 3 circles, kind of with this spiky look. Again, I haven't decided which specific plants they are. And then I'm going to actually put a dot in the center of all 3. I kind of like the way that looks if I wanted to, and I'll just show this for the purposes of the video. I could come back and maybe outline a little bit of each, just so it looks as if they're 3 separate ones, or I give the intention that there's 3 separate ones. Same thing here. Here, these 2 over here, maybe I have more of a ornamental contoured look to them, where it's more just crinkled. So they look like a grouping like so, and then a dot in the center for each of those. Okay, and then I have right here just a little bed of what would be almost like plugs or bulbs, how I might do this. Well, the bulbs, I'm not going to individually have circles of all of them. I'm going to have these swaths of little beds, and they're going to kind of be these ephemeral groupings, very organic forms that are just going to look very random, very fluid. And they're going to highlight that maybe it's a ground cover that I'm sort of putting in plugs for, or maybe it's something like bulbs, like I said, whatever I want for that particular use. I'm not highlighting them individually as circles as I did those two, but they're more of a grouping. And then let me just add in then my pavers here. So I'm just going to be doing this with ink. This would take a while. These are all fairly straight-edged pavers. I'm going to work from the top down. My head will probably get in the way a little bit, but I'll try and go fast. Okay, so I have kind of the pavers in there. I sped up the video a bit so that you didn't get bored just watching me do the same thing a million times. So then we would just add our bed line, however that would go. Again, we're assuming that we have the bed mapped out, so I'm just kind of following a line that I have. I will say that being able to drag your line like this does take a little time, so it is in one fluid motion, and practicing it does help. Okay, so I have my little bed there, and then the question is, okay, now what do I want to come back to and start adding a little bit of detail on? And so I would get my finest line weight, which is my 0.3 here, and it goes even finer, but for the video I think this is going to be good enough. And I'm going to add things again top down. So the thing that you want to avoid is overdrawing. So right now we have a lot of symbols that have a lot of itty bitty details on it, and so if I'm viewing this from far away, I might miss out on all those details. They might kind of just coagulate into a lot of just lines that converge together, and I don't really pick up the individual elements. So you want to be very mindful of what you're adding detail to. So I would definitely add it to my specimen tree, maybe hatching or stippling. Again, my evergreen, more of my specimen. Probably the stones would get a little bit, just to call them out, maybe a little shadow as well. And then I would probably stipple around the edge here and maybe add a couple little notes of tone to my hardscape. So the way that might look is if I'm coming in and adding hatching. So I'm assuming that my light source is coming from the northeast in this case, if north is straight up and down. Add a little texture to the tree here. Now, you could at this point render. You could use colored pencil or marker. You can scan it and go back into Photoshop and color it however you see fit. And if that's the case, then you would add some of that there as long as you have your outlines nicely inked. But here we're just assuming that we're doing something black and white, very quick for a client. And we can also come in afterwards, even with some of this stuff, and render over it. There's no real one way to skin a cat. So I might do something like that. Over here, same kind of thing. I would add a little more shadow just to the edge here. Add a little bit here as well. I forgot to add a little bit here also. Okay, and then maybe I add little stipples or lines over the top of some of these pavers just to rough them up a little so they don't look so uniform. So little stipples just to give a little bit of texture. I actually like the stipple look on these, so I'm going to actually do a little more of this on these. I think it looks nice. Reads well. So here you go, just the last couple, let me finish. Okay, and then same thing over here. How might I do these stones like this? Well, I would definitely add a little bit of shadow to the bottom of them, so it adds a little bit of depth to the edge. Look a little more rectilinear, so you could definitely tell that there's something different than the plants that are near them. And then I might add just a few little hatch marks just so you can tell them apart. Now everything else, the question becomes, what should I do here? Should I add more texture? Should I add anything else? Now, I might add a little bit of double outline to some of these little edges of sort of the groupings, just to add three-dimensionality to them so they don't just seem very static, like I'm doing here. But that's about it. That's where I would want to stop. Now the reason for that is this idea of sort of the 1/3 rule, or the 30% rule. And that's essentially within a composition, you'd want to add detail or allow your eye to engage with about 30% of the drawing. And then the other 70% is providing your eye sort of a resting point. So it's worked really well for a variety of different sort of artist genres. If you think of animation or just general figure drawing, architecture. Look at some of the very famous designers within those disciplines, and you'll see that often what they do is they'll have within the compositional frame a good amount of detail on only about 30% of the actual space of the drawing, and the other allows your eye to rest and provides an area for your mind to just catch up with what it's actually seeing. So if you look at this drawing, I have good amount of detail, good amount of detail, good amount of detail. So about 30% of this is detail, but then within the overall frame, I have about a 70% just space that's nice and white and very sort of relaxing. It allows my eye to rest within the composition. And so then if I was to view, sort of take a step back and view it from afar, this would read much better from a distance as like a board or a screen or something that I might pin up to a client. So that's the basics of how I can put together a plant grouping with some of the materials and some of the shapes that we went over in previous lessons. So again, try it out, get a feel for what works for you, what kind of symbols you like working with individually, and then start to practice, and you'll get the hang of what you think is better for your particular design technique. Okay? Thanks, guys.